This is an 18th century powder flask. It is made from ram's horn. You can see some of the texture of the horn there. It's got silver mounts on the top and at the end. This would have been used for priming the pans of flintlock guns and pistols. And the reason why this is particularly important is because this is a Hanoverian object. So while a lot of Jacobite objects were treasured and kept and looked after, Hanoverian objects don't necessarily have the same importance attributed to them, particularly historically. So this is really significant because the inscription that goes around the top of the collar mount is a Hanoverian inscription which describes the events of the 1715 Jacobite Rising. The first line of the inscription talks about the Battle of Sheriffmuir, which is the most famous battle in the 1715 Rising. It took place in November 1715, and the inscription here describes it as happening at Dunblane, and that's the contemporary term for the Battle of Sheriffmuir. Interestingly, for this object, Sheriffmuir, because it stood out so much in history, is only the first line of this inscription, so there's much more detail and information on this inscription than just that one battle. The Battle of Sheriffmuir was actually inconclusive, but on here it is described as a Hanoverian victory. Moving on to the next part of the inscription, it talks about the events that happened in the north of Scotland, which are not really very widely known. It describes the key people and events of the 1715 Rising, and in the north of Scotland, those people were the Earl of Sutherland and the Earl of Seaforth. Sutherland was a Hanoverian supporter, and Seaforth was a Jacobite. So on here, the Earl of Sutherland is described as the victorious person in the battle between him and Seaforth. This was actually an ongoing campaign where Seaforth and Sutherland competed for control of Inverness. From the north of Scotland, the action then moved down to England to the Battle of Preston, and this is also commemorated on the inscription. It talks about how the Jacobite army was led siege to by the Hanoverians, and it mentions again the generals who were involved in that, who were General Carpenter and General Wills. The most convincing line on this inscription, which shows that it truly is a Hanoverian object, is towards the end, where it describes the Jacobites as running away. This is in reference to their retreat to Perth in the face of the onslaught of the Hanoverian army. Arguably, the Jacobites did run away. They threw all of their baggage and their artillery in the Tay and disappeared, while James VIII and III escaped to France in the night along with the rising leader, the Earl of Mar. We don't know who owned this powder horn. It covers the entire campaign, which is very interesting for us, but not one person could have been present at all of the events. It's particularly significant for us because it shows us the Hanoverian perspective of a rising, that we have a lot of objects in the collection relating to the Jacobite side, but not necessarily the Hanoverians. It's also very victorious and triumphant, and it would have been really obvious to whoever owned this. The inscription would have been really clear. It's quite abbreviated now and sometimes a little bit difficult to understand, but it's very different from the Jacobite objects where secrecy was important in conveying political sentiment.